You're standing behind bulletproof glass at 11 p.m. watching cars pull up to your pumps every 3 minutes. The digital display clicks upward, $47, $63, $52, $71. It never stops. You're selling a product people absolutely need, cannot substitute, and buy regardless of price. Americans drive 3.2 trillion miles annually. Every single one of those miles requires gasoline. You're not hoping customers show up. They have to show up. Their tanks run empty whether the economy is booming or collapsing. You've got 8 pumps running 18 hours a day. That's 240 transactions daily at $50 average. You're moving $12,000 in fuel sales per day. That's $4.3 million annually just from pumps. Then there's the convenience store, Red Bull at 60% markup, fountain drinks at 85% margin, cigarettes, lottery tickets, beef jerky, energy shots. Every customer who pumps gas is a potential customer who walks inside and spends $8 on items that cost you $3. The barriers to entry are massive. You need environmental permits, underground storage tank certifications, petroleum dealer licenses. This keeps competition limited. You're not in a saturated market like restaurants. There are only so many corners with enough traffic to support a station. You found one. You own it. You're selling an addictive necessity to a captive market. That's the dream every immigrant entrepreneur and small business investor chases when they look at gas stations. Here's what nobody mentions until you're 6 months into negative cash flow. A gas station is not a fuel business. It's a real estate location play wrapped around a low-margin convenience store where your ability to survive depends entirely on whether you can generate enough inside sales to cover the overhead that fuel sales cannot support. The actual gasoline, the product everyone thinks you're selling, generates profit margins of 5 to 15 cents per gallon on a good day and loses money on bad days when wholesale prices spike faster than you can adjust pump prices. You're not making money selling gas. You're using gas as a loss leader to drive foot traffic into a convenience store where a $3.29 Red Bull that cost you $1.32 generates more profit than 25 gallons of gasoline. The customer who fills up and leaves made you $2.50. The customer who buys a Gatorade, a bag of chips, and a scratcher made you $4.80 in 3 minutes. Your entire business model depends on converting fuel customers into convenience store customers at rates high enough to cover $18,000 monthly rent, $95,000 annual labor costs, utility bills that hit $4,500 monthly, and liability insurance that runs $28,000 annually because you're storing 30,000 gallons of flammable liquid under the ground. The economics only work when you understand you're running a convenience retail operation with a fuel pump customer acquisition system attached. Once you understand that, everything else makes sense. Let's start with the number that separates dreamers from operators. Buying an existing gas station costs $500,000 to $3 million depending on location, brand affiliation, and included real estate. If you're purchasing the business but leasing the land and facility, you're looking at $350,000 to $1.2 million for inventory, equipment, and franchise rights. If you're buying land and building from scratch, you're at $2.5 million to $4.5 million before pumping your first gallon. Franchise fees and brand affiliation are unavoidable for most operators. Independent gas stations cannot compete with Shell, Chevron, BP, or branded networks that offer credit card processing, fuel supply contracts, and national advertising. Franchise fees run $25,000 to $75,000 upfront, plus 3 to 7 cents per gallon in ongoing royalties. On a station moving 150,000 gallons monthly, that's $4,500 to $10,500 monthly just for the brand name and supply network. Before we get to the revenue model, there's a cost almost nobody budgets for: environmental compliance and underground storage tank regulations. Federal and state regulations require double-walled tanks, leak detection systems, and regular monitoring. Installing compliant underground storage tanks costs $250,000 to $500,000 for a typical 3-tank system, 1 diesel, 2 grades of unleaded. These tanks have a 30-year lifespan. If you're buying an existing station, you need to verify tank age and compliance status. Inheriting tanks installed in 1997 means you're facing $400,000 in replacement costs within 5 years. Environmental liability insurance is mandatory and expensive. You're paying $18,000 to $35,000 annually for pollution liability coverage because one leak can trigger $500,000 to $2 million in soil remediation costs. The EPA doesn't care if the leak happened before you bought the property. You own it now. You remediate it. Inventory and working capital requirements are higher than people expect. You need to pre-purchase fuel from your distributor. A full delivery, 8,000 gallons, costs $24,000 to $32,000 depending on wholesale prices. You need capital to maintain 2 weeks of fuel inventory plus convenience store stock. That's $55,000 to $85,000 in working capital before you open the doors. Point-of-sale systems, security cameras, pump card readers, and lottery terminals cost $45,000 to $85,000 for a modern setup. Payment processing fees eat 1.8% to 2.4% of all credit card transactions. When 78% of customers pay with cards, and your average fuel transaction is $52, you're paying 94 cents to $1.25 per transaction just to process payment. That's $67,000 to $90,000 annually in credit card fees on a station doing $4 million in fuel sales. Add it up. Business acquisition or franchise rights, $400,000 to $1.2 million. Underground storage tanks and environmental compliance, $300,000 to $500,000. Inventory and working capital, $70,000 to $100,000. Technology and POS systems, $60,000 to $85,000. Total, $830,000 to $1,885,000 for a branded gas station with existing infrastructure in a decent location. Building new pushes costs to $2.5 million to $4.5 million. Most people who fail here don't fail for dramatic reasons. They fail because of 3 traps that destroy margin quietly and relentlessly. The first trap is wholesale price volatility and margin compression. You buy fuel from your distributor at wholesale prices that change daily based on commodity markets you cannot control. When crude oil spikes, your wholesale cost jumps 12 to 20 cents per gallon overnight. But you cannot immediately raise pump prices by the same amount because customers will drive to the competitor 2 blocks away. There's a 36 to 72-hour lag between wholesale price increases and when the market tolerates retail price increases. During those 72 hours, you are selling fuel at a loss. A station moving 5,000 gallons daily losing 8 cents per gallon is bleeding $400 daily or $12,000 over that adjustment period. This happens 6 to 12 times per year during volatile periods. Annual margin compression from price volatility costs $45,000 to $95,000. The second trap is credit card fee erosion. Credit card companies charge percentage-based fees on the entire transaction, including taxes. When gas prices are $5.50 per gallon instead of $3.20, your payment processing fees increase by 72% with zero increase in profit. A station doing $4.5 million in annual fuel sales at $3.20 per gallon pays $81,000 in credit card fees. The same volume at $5.50 per gallon generates $7.7 million in sales and $139,000 in credit card fees, an increase of $58,000 in pure cost with no corresponding profit increase because you're still making 10 cents per gallon either way. High gas prices destroy your margin structure. The third trap is inside sales conversion failure. Your business model requires 35% to 45% of fuel customers to enter the store and purchase high-margin items. If conversion drops to 25%, your convenience store revenue falls from $720,000 annually to $490,000, a $230,000 gap that directly hits your bottom line. Conversion rates drop when the station is perceived as unsafe, bathrooms are dirty, product selection is poor, or prices are not competitive. Operators who focus on fuel and ignore store operations watch conversion collapse and discover that fuel sales alone cannot cover fixed costs. Here's the part that changes how you see this entire business. Gas stations make money from 3 revenue streams with widely different margins, and only one generates actual profit. Fuel sales are the traffic driver, not the profit center. Retail gas margins average 10 to 25 cents per gallon after credit card fees and royalties. A station selling 150,000 gallons monthly at 15 cents per gallon margin generates $22,500 in gross fuel profit. Subtract credit card fees of $7,200 and franchise royalties of $6,000, and net fuel profit is $9,300 monthly or $111,600 annually. You're moving $4.8 million in fuel to generate $111,600 in profit. That's a 2.3% margin. Convenience store sales are where actual profit lives. Inside sales average $60,000 to $90,000 monthly for well-run stations. Gross margins on convenience items run 30% to 50% depending on category. Cigarettes, 8% to 12% margin. Beverages, 40% to 60%. Snacks, 35% to 50%. Prepared food, 50% to 70%. Lottery, 5% to 6% commission. Blended gross margin across all categories, 32% to 38%. Monthly inside sales of $75,000 at 35% margin generate $26,250 in gross profit or $315,000 annually. Ancillary services add meaningful revenue. Car washes generate $3,500 to $8,500 monthly with 65% to 75% margins. ATM commissions at $800 to $2,200 monthly. Air and vacuum are minor but pure margin, $300 to $800 monthly. Now let's do the math. Monthly fuel sales, 150,000 gallons at $3.60 average equals $540,000 revenue. Net fuel profit after fees and royalties, $9,300. Inside sales, $75,000 at 35% margin equals $26,250 gross profit. Car wash and ancillary, $4,500 at 70% margin equals $3,150. Total monthly gross profit, $38,700 or $464,400 annually. Now subtract operating costs. Labor, 3 shifts. Manager, part-time $95,000 annually. Rent or mortgage, $180,000 to $240,000 annually. Utilities, $54,000. Insurance, $38,000. Maintenance and repairs, $28,000. Credit card processing, $86,000. Miscellaneous and compliance, $22,000. Total annual costs, $503,000 to $563,000. You're losing money. On $5.9 million in total revenue, you're generating $464,400 in gross profit against $530,000 in operating costs. You're negative $65,600 annually. Now we get to the number that actually determines everything: inside sales conversion rate and average transaction value. If you increase inside sales from $75,000 to $95,000 monthly by improving conversion from 35% to 42%, you add $20,000 monthly at 35% margin, $7,000 in additional gross profit monthly or $84,000 annually. Now you're profitable at $18,400 annually. The difference between bankruptcy and survival is 7 percentage points of customer conversion. These numbers are based on industry averages and should be treated as a framework for thinking, not a guarantee of any particular outcome. Gas station economics are brutally thin. You're optimizing for volume and conversion, not margin. Let's talk about the collapse of independent gas stations in the 2010s. Between 2007 and 2017, the U.S. lost over 25,000 gas stations, a 20% decline. What killed them? Credit card fees and branded competition. When gas prices spiked to $4.50 per gallon in 2008, credit card fees on a $65 fill-up hit $1.56 at 2.4% rates. Independent stations couldn't absorb those fees while competing against integrated oil companies like ExxonMobil that made money on upstream crude oil extraction, not just retail margins. Small independents had no profit buffer. Rising credit card fees during high-price periods destroyed them. This is not a story about bad luck. This is a story about structural disadvantage in a commodity business where integrated players control supply and can survive on retail margins that bankrupt independents. Now take Buc-ee's, the Texas-based gas station chain. Buc-ee's operates massive travel centers with 100-plus pumps, 60,000 square foot convenience stores, an obsessive focus on cleanliness and experience. They don't make money on fuel. They use fuel as a loss leader to drive traffic into stores selling Buc-ee's branded merchandise, fresh food, barbecue, fudge, and snacks at 50% to 70% margins. Inside sales per location average $2 million to $4 million monthly. Store gross profit margins hit 45% to 55% because they've built a destination retail brand that happens to sell gas, not a gas station that happens to have a store. Buc-ee's understood the model. Fuel is advertising. The store is the business. Here's what the smartest operators in this industry do differently. They don't just sell fuel and snacks. They monetize every square foot and customer interaction. First, food service expansion. Installing a Subway, Dunkin', or proprietary kitchen that serves breakfast burritos, pizza, and fried chicken transforms economics. Food service generates $45,000 to $120,000 monthly with 55% to 65% gross margins. A well-executed food program adds $300,000 to $850,000 in annual gross profit. The infrastructure cost, $120,000 to $280,000 for kitchen equipment and franchise fees, pays back in 18 to 24 months. Second, EV charging stations. Federal and state incentives cover 30% to 50% of installation costs for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. For Level 2 chargers cost $40,000 installed after incentives. You charge 35 cents to 50 cents per kilowatt hour on electricity that costs you 12 cents per kilowatt hour. EV drivers spend 20 to 40 minutes charging, much longer than fuel customers, dramatically increasing inside sales conversion. Early adopters in California report EV charging customers spend $12 to $18 inside compared to $6 for fuel customers. Third, fleet fuel contracts. Partner with local businesses, delivery services, and municipal fleets for guaranteed volume purchases. A contract supplying 25 vehicles at 120 gallons per vehicle monthly delivers 3,000 guaranteed gallons at negotiated pricing. 10 fleet contracts add 30,000 gallons monthly in predictable volume. You're offering convenience, centralized billing, fuel cards, in exchange for volume commitment. Fourth, propane and diesel sales. Adding propane tank exchange or diesel pumps captures adjacent markets. Propane exchanges generate $8 to $12 profit per transaction with minimal labor. Diesel attracts commercial vehicles, contractors, landscapers, truckers, who spend heavily inside on coffee, energy drinks, and food. Here is the honest math, not the pitch deck version. The real version. Good year scenario. Your station in a strong suburban location hits 165,000 gallons monthly at 18 cents per gallon net margin after all fees. Fuel profit, $35,640 monthly. Inside sales hit $92,000 monthly at 38% margin due to strong food service program and 44% customer conversion. Inside profit, $34,960 monthly. Ancillary revenue, $6,200 monthly at 68% margin equals $4,216 monthly. Total monthly gross profit, $74,816 or $897,792 annually. Operating costs, $520,000. Net profit, $377,792. On a $1.4 million investment, that's a 27% annual return. This is the scenario where everything clicks. Bad year scenario. Gas prices spike and become volatile. You're in a price-competitive area with 3 stations within 1 mile. Fuel margins compress to 11 cents per gallon as you fight to maintain volume. Monthly fuel sales, 142,000 gallons at 11 cents net equals $15,620 monthly profit. Inside sales drop to $68,000 monthly as customers cherry-pick fuel prices and leave without entering. Inside profit at 33% margin, lower due to promotional pricing to drive traffic $22,440 monthly. Ancillary, $4,800 at 65% equals $3,120. Total monthly gross profit, $41,180 or $494,160 annually. Operating costs remain largely fixed at $505,000. Net profit, minus $10,840. You're losing money. Stay with this because the final calculation changes everything. The gap between these scenarios is $388,632 in annual profit, driven entirely by fuel margin environment and inside sales conversion, neither of which you fully control. Commodity price volatility and local competition determine whether you're thriving or surviving. One new competitor opening 800 feet away can cut your volume by 25% and destroy profitability overnight. The person who wins in this business is not the most business savvy or operationally excellent. The person who wins owns the real estate, operates in a location with limited competition and strong traffic counts, and treats the gas station as a convenience store that uses fuel as customer acquisition. They're obsessive about inside sales conversion. They track conversion rates daily. They train staff on upselling. They keep bathrooms spotless because they know dirty bathrooms kill conversion by 12 to 18 percentage points. They price inside merchandise competitively with grocery stores, not at traditional convenience markups, because they understand volume at 35% margin beats lower volume at 50% margin. They also have multiple revenue streams. They've added food service, EV charging, propane, and fleet contracts. They are not dependent on fuel margins. When fuel margins compress, food service and EV charging sustain profitability. Here's the counterintuitive truth: the best gas station owners are not fuel experts. They're retail operators who understand customer behavior, inventory turns, and merchandising. They know that selling 200 energy drinks weekly at $1.85 profit each generates $19,240 annually, more profit than 30,000 gallons of fuel. They're running convenience retail with a fuel-based customer acquisition strategy. The ones who think they're in the fuel business go bankrupt quietly. So let's go back to that moment at 11 p.m. Behind bulletproof glass watching the pumps click upward. The cars still pull up every 3 minutes. The transactions still happen. But now you see it clearly. That $63 fuel sale made you $1.13 after credit card fees and royalties. That's 1.8% margin. The customer who walked in and bought a Red Bull, a bag of Takis, and a scratcher made you $5.20 in 2 minutes. That's 65% margin. The romantic version was about selling an essential product with guaranteed demand. The real version is understanding that gas stations are convenience retail operations disguised as fuel businesses. And the only operators who survive are the ones who figured out that fuel is advertising, not product. You can make a living here if you own the real estate, maintain fanatical focus on inside sales conversion, and operate in a protected location. But the fantasy version, the passive income from selling a necessity, that's not real. What's real is this: you're running a retail grind with 2% fuel margins and 40% snack margins. And your entire financial survival depends on convincing 42% of fuel customers to walk inside and buy a $3.29 Red Bull. The pumps bring them to you. What happens next determines whether you make $380,000 or lose $11,000. And that difference is not about fuel. It never was.